Great, thanks. So, my name is Sarah Wolf. I'm with Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. I am the Strategic Policy Director here, and I'm so glad to be joined today by Buff Grace, also at Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, and James Birr from the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota to talk about what we can do to take advantage of tax credits that are expiring in the next few months. This is part of our webinar series, What is Driving My Energy Costs Up? How the retreat from clean energy is costing us all more and what you can do about it. Um, this webinar series has three different pieces that we'll be talking about. And it is true that I cannot advance my slides on my computer, and I'm really sorry. So, James, I'm going to see if we can get to you. And you don't need the slides for this next necessarily. The slides are really helpful when we get to Buff and James. So, sorry we're having that technical issue. But the three pieces of this webinar series that we're doing are this one today about taking advantage of federal tax credits. The second one is in 2 weeks from now, and it's called The More They Build, the More They Make, How Utilities Plan for Profit. And the third one is on data centers and what happens to communities when data centers come to town. And so this is a way of understanding the very dynamic forces that are impacting our energy costs. Today, on the next slide, is just we're gonna dive into if you click 1 and 2 times this piece with Buff Grace and with James Birr. So thank you to my MNIPL colleagues and also to the Citizens Utility Board for participating in this to see what we can do in the next few months. As a grounding behind this series, I mean, how is it that the retreat from clean energy is going to cost us all more? It's important to dwell on that question for just a moment. We'll go to the next slide, which is just to say the great news is that renewable energy is the cheapest energy. And this is not news probably to very many people on this call or out there. It was back in 2017 that Ben Fauke, who was the then CEO of Xcel Energy, said, we're finding that wind energy is the cheapest form of energy that we can put on the system. And since then, those costs have gone down, solar costs have gone down, and we have found that even today, even if we are not taking into account any kinds of tax incentives on an unsubsidized dollar per megawatt basis, renewable energy generation remains the most cost competitive form of generation. Thanks. We'll go to the next slide there. But it's really important to understand the context that we're in with this federal administration and that they are doing a very definite pivot back to fossil fuels. And we anticipated this when then candidate Trump was talking to oil industry and fossil fuel executives and saying, support my campaign and I will do everything I can to help your industries. And it's true. They did support his campaign, and there is plenty of news out there about how that is paying off for them. If you'll click one more forward for me, James, this is I just want to share with you the Climate Backtracker. This is out of the Sabin Center for Climate Change Law. It's a great link there. We'll try to put that in some resources that we follow up with. And it does a great job of tracking what is happening throughout the administration on a daily basis in terms of what kind of pieces are being repealed. And on the next slide here, we'll just talk about some of the ones you've probably heard of and that are very relevant for us today. There's first of all the taking away of the things that were good for climate change and for all of us. The Inflation Reduction Act tax credits passed back in 2022 were something that our communities who were concerned about climate and concerns about environmental justice and concerned about affordability and concerned about communities. These are the things that we fought for. And they passed in 22. It was a time when we really were projecting this is the path for really moving our country to clean energy. Those were supposed to expire in 2034 and beyond. But in July, when Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, those are now mostly expiring in December. So that's a huge blow. But there are also the supportive regulations that the administration is undoing, the reversal of climate endangerment finding that the EPA is proposing, and just so much more. If you go on the climate backtracker, you'll see things on it. It's scrolling back to the beginning of January. One of the most recent ones is to undo hydrofluorocarbon regulations in cooling systems. And we're also seeing that the administration is canceling committed federal funding for clean energy and transmission projects. There have been articles really recently about how that's going to be impacting projects in Minnesota too. And at the same time, the administration is boosting things like oil and gas subsidies. A new report found that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act has about 40 billion in new subsidies for the oil and gas industry over the next 10 years.
Mm.
And that was a report that came out in the first part of September. So I don't think it included the latest news, which is out of just about a week ago, that there's going to be a new $625 million investment in American coal industry. And this is accompanying many more things like extending compliance standards or deadlines for effluent standards, et cetera. So we're definitely seeing that there is an interest in elevating anything that is fossil fuel oriented and squashing anything that is in the clean energy realm. Would you please go to the next slide? And James, I just want to highlight work by one of your colleagues over at Citizens Utility Board. This is a particular blog post about something that happened earlier this summer. And it was under the energy emergency that Trump had declared. He ordered that a coal plant scheduled to close at the end of May in 2025, that had been planned for years and communities had been planning on that, should stay open. The result of that forced staying open is that that energy community had a lot of extra expenses to keep that coal plant open. And it was so burdensome on that community that they needed to ask all the ratepayers in the MISO energy area, which is serving the Midwest, to help them subsidize the costs of that coal plant. So I want to thank Cub for bringing that story forward. And these stories are going to keep happening as we try to breathe life into the industries that are driving climate chaos, but also would be naturally being phased out because they are simply more expensive. Would you show me the next slide, please? Great. And I think this is the point where we get to hear from the other speakers. So that's just a small setup about how the direction of the country is going and how that might impact pocketbooks on people here. So I really want to then shift the focus to what do we do? What can we do in this moment to drive forward the change that we know we need to see? And we will continue to work against new fossil fuels as we can, but it also means that we are taking very seriously our own transition to clean energy as businesses, as nonprofits, as households, and as people. And that's what we're talking about particularly here today. So great. I'd like to introduce Buff Grace, who is with Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, to talk about solar opportunities.
Thanks so much, Sarah. James, do you have the Slides up. There we
Yes,
go.
apologies. The
Oh,
worst time for my Gmail to decide to log me out, but should be back up.
okay, great. Yeah, perfect. Okay, thanks, Sarah. I'm going to talk about solar for your congregation or your nonprofit organization and kind of what this moment is that Sarah's referring to. Next slide, please. Um, The urgency is, as Sarah noted, the big, beautiful bill in July is eliminating tax credits, or they're changing the rules to such an extent that it's going to be very difficult to access those tax credits. Nonprofits and faith communities and everybody in Minnesota stands to lose thousands of dollars. And, we all fought really hard for this to get that Inflation Reduction Act passed back in 2022 and provide all those incentives. And we want to hold on to as many of those federal dollars for our state and for renewable energy. So there is a small window to act. We can act in 2025, and that's what I'm going to tell you about. Next slide. The US government will pay 30%, sometimes more, for the cost of your solar system. That means a $100,000 system, you'll get a check from the federal government for $30,000. Uh, House systems, in order to qualify, have to be installed and completed by the end of this year. But businesses and nonprofit organizations, including houses of worship, faith communities, they only need to pay 10% of the cost of the system, and then they will qualify as having begun construction. And that beginning construction is the activity that holds on to that tax credit. Faith communities, nonprofits are specifically cited in the Inflation Reduction Act as being eligible to get that tax credit, even though they don't pay taxes. We've done it with congregations. They've gotten their money. We know it's possible. And then if you begin construction, you actually don't have to finish construction to the end of 2027 and maybe even as late as 2029. So there's a lot of reason to get in the door by placing that 10% down. Next slide. We can help you if you're a commercial account with the utility. We are not able to help residential right now. There's just too tight of a window to actually get to the finish line for homeowners, and we partner with other organizations who have advised us that it's really difficult to do that. So today, we're talking about commercial, nonprofits, businesses, and houses of worship. Next slide. A solar system is a set of panels that sit on your building, typically on your roof. They're wired together. They collect the sun's electricity. They feed it into the electrical system in your building, switching it from DC current of the sun's energy to AC current that all our systems run on. And if there's extra, it flows out onto the grid. Next slide. Uh, I don't want to make too much of this dichotomy, but this does kind of paint the picture of what your choices are before you. You can stick with utility electricity and support sometimes national and global energy companies, or you can get your energy from the sun. Uh, our utilities in our state have a mixed bag of demands on them. Uh, so, to some extent, they're required to serve us, their customers, but to a large extent, they're also required to serve shareholders. And the better their stock options and their quarterly profits, the better they uh, please those shareholders. For instance, Xcel Energy's CEO with his stock options made $21 million in 2023 and $13 million last year. Minnesota Power in the Northland was just bought by BlackRock, despite Cub's best efforts and our best efforts. And so that means, it's a giant for-profit $11.5 trillion company who has other demands on them other than our energy production. Next slide. If you choose rooftop solar energy, you're 100% renewable. All that energy is renewable. If you stick with your utility, you're at best maybe 50% renewable right now. We're hoping that our utilities are 100% renewable by 2040. But there's a lot between now and 2040 as to whether we actually get there or not. If you choose rooftop solar, you know it's all renewable energy. You choose a Minnesota-owned company that supplies your solar panels and installs and whatnot. You've got local control versus national and global companies that are centralized and, push profits out of our state. You prioritize your concerns. You have potential for becoming more resilient, being off the grid in times of grid outage, and you reduce your demand on the grid. Whereas uh, utility energy requires state regulation and requires us to constantly be advocating for our values with a Public Utilities Commission and making sure that we get those. And, the faces the shareholder priorities and demands more of our grid, requires more building of the grid. Next slide. So we think the values show that we should be choosing renewable energy. And when we do that, we align our values with our actions. We protect a little bit of against the increasing rates and volatility in the utility marketplace, and we save some real dollars. And I'm going to talk about those. Next slide. Here's a quote from our former United Nations Secretary. Climate change is the single greatest threat to a sustainable future. But at the same time, addressing the climate change presents a golden opportunity to promote prosperity, security, and a brighter future for all. I see a lot of you that I know on this uh, gathering, and I know you're fighting for these values and many things that we work for, from racial justice to migration justice to housing justice, they intersect with climate change. And so supporting renewable energy helps not just address the climate crisis, but address a lot of other concerns that we hold dear as well. Next slide. As I mentioned, if you're an Excel customer, you're seeing Excel seek raising your rates regularly. It's about a 3.5% per year average for the last 15 years, and they're asking for much more. So we stand to face much higher rates. Also, Excel, is showing a mixed record of really serving uh, utility electricity holders. We see 52,000 households disconnected last year. And so, you protect yourself a little bit by going with solar and owning solar. Next slide. What many people are interested in and somewhat aware of is that you can get a lot of financial savings from going solar. You get to avoid the cost to the electricity for your to the utility for your electricity, or you send electricity out onto the grid and are paid the retail rate for that in Excel territory. In other utility areas, they also net meter, but maybe at not the retail rate. You also get an incentive over and above that from the Excel utility. You may get other utilities may give you incentive. Some municipalities give you an incentive, such as Minneapolis, Hopkins, Edina, St. Louis Park. Um, but then the largest one single uh, incentive that we know of is this federal tax credit. And that's what's expiring and what's driving this urgency right now in this time period in the fall. A fourth savings that businesses can get is the depreciation, both federal and state. Um, For-profit businesses can claim capital depreciation on their taxes. That's not available for nonprofits. Um, so next slide. So the basic math of working on a solar system is you've got your cost on one side and your savings on the other side, and you try to balance those out. So in the beginning, yeah, and I got my graphic backwards here. Sorry, the the seesaw should be down on the left on the cost side in the beginning in year one. The solar system is going to cost you some money up front. You're going to pay a little bit of money in maintenance, a little bit of money in insurance, and if you have to take out a loan to buy the system, of course, you have loan costs. But the largest cost by far is the system itself. And that's a turnkey installation cost that provides for all the ins and outs of getting solar installed on your building. Then over time, you're going to realize some savings. Early out, you're going to get that 30% federal tax credit in the first 12 years. You're going to begin to see some energy production offsets and some value there. You're going to begin to get that utility incentive, which comes each year, and you're going to get a municipal incentive. That municipal incentive is typically upfront right away. Next slide. Oh, great. Yep, year 10. Here's what we so in year 10, you've built up over time those savings and they slowly offset that original cost up front. So uh, typically for most systems, that's in anywhere from say year 7 to year 12. It depends on how much you pay for electricity, how big your system is, how much energy it can produce, whether you get municipal incentives and some of those others. But this is the basic math that we're always trying to work with. Next slide. We have two main financial paths for you to follow. We can help you go through all of these. We can help you all along every step of the way. If you want to buy your system outright, you can pay for it up front. Uh, Maybe you have the money already. If you're a house of worship, perhaps you have an endowment. If you're a nonprofit, perhaps you have a capital holding fund for these type of purchases. Or maybe you don't, and maybe you need to borrow the money. We can help with both of those scenarios. If you pay for it, you own it, you get all the benefits, and you assume the responsibilities. In another option, it's called a power purchase agreement. You don't buy the system. An investor buys the system for you, installs it on your property, and they get those benefits that we talked about, the tax credit, the energy production, the incentives, those types of things. The benefit to you is that you didn't have to pay much or maybe zero you had to pay, and you get a little bit of an electricity benefit. Then somewhere down the line, maybe you're 8, 10, 15, you can buy the system from the investor for a smaller, much smaller amount than you would have paid in the beginning. Next slide. So let me give you a couple of examples so you can see what this looks like. If you buy the system yourself, let's say you buy the system and it costs $150,000. In the first 12 months, you're going to get $45,000 back from the federal government. That's that 30% tax credit. You get that even if you're a nonprofit. So in the first 12 months, the system cost to you is actually $105,000. Over the course of the year, you're going to save $6,750. You're also going to get a $2,000 incentive payment from Excel. If this is an example, if you're in Excel territory, if you're in a different utility, we can also help you. There may be slightly different numbers there, but for Excel, you're going to make each year about $8,700. And if you multiply that by 12 years, you can see that in 12 years, you're going to have made back $105,000 and you will be at zero. You will have zeroed out your investment. So after year 12, all that energy you save is just pure profit to your organization. That means that's money that's going directly to your mission instead of to a utility company in our state. Over the life of the 30-year life of the system, you will have made a total of $200,000. So you will have made your initial investment back, and then you'll make on top of that $200,000. Next slide. If you go the power purchase agreement route, we have two options. One, you can pay zero down, so absolutely no cost to you whatsoever. You begin in year one getting a small savings on your electricity, about 10% of that savings that you saw in the direct purchase. And then across that 15 years, the first 15 years, if you multiply 15 times that 675, you've saved just over $10,000 in those first 15 years. Then you would buy the system from the investor. That would cost you just over $22,000. And so the net for you in those first 15 years, owning the system would only cost you $12,000. instead of that original 150,000 that you have to pay if you're a direct purchase. Then, of course, you're saving every year, and by that time you're saving about $12,000 a year. And so you see you would pay that back very quickly, and then you get profit going forward as with the other. So you're talking about a 30-year gain of about $168,000. I'll give you one more sample. Next slide, please. A slightly different model, same power purchase, same investor, but instead of paying zero in the first year, you pay $30,000. So you don't pay the $150,000 to own the system yourself. You pay $30,000 up front, but you save a little bit more each year. And then in year 10, so 5 years earlier than the zero down, you get to own the system for no cost whatsoever. And so you can see that you're about $20,000 down because you put that $30,000 up front, but you quickly begin to make that back. In 2 years, you've made that back, and then you're gaining again throughout the rest of the life of the array. You've made $220,000 over the 30-year life of the array. Just something to point out, the 30 years is a warranty. If you get to year 30 and you don't do anything, the system keeps producing. It's not producing as efficiently as it did on day one, but it's still producing. You don't have to do anything. You still get the free electricity. You just won't have a system that's warranted at that point. And we have systems in Minnesota that have been producing 40 years. So, next slide. So if you would like to explore this, if you know a nonprofit or a small business or your faith community wants to explore this, it's very easy. I just need 12 months of electric bills. They have to be the actual bills. I can't take a usage report. I need physical bills. Those can be PDFs you download from Excel's site, or I can pick them up from your location and scan them myself and use them. We need a little bit of information, if you know it, about the life expectancy of your roof. How old is it? How much life is left in it? You can send those to me at my email. I'll drop that in the chat and we'll send that in the follow-up. And then we'll get you a comprehensive design proposal. This is our installer does this. There's no cost to you. We can show exactly what your financial outlook will look like for 30 years, what the system will look like on your building, and answer all your questions. And then you can decide. We've got a deadline of probably November 30th, realistically. We are, absolute deadlines the end of the year, but we know we're facing holidays and other demands through December, so we're asking people December 1 to get there. We work with Apadana Energy. They're a minority-owned, Minnesota-owned business. They were named by the state as the top number one solar installer by the state procurement office. We've had great experience with them. We can tell you more about why we chose that. So, James, if you want to just flip through the next few slides, there's just some pictures of places. You can just keep moving right through those. These are systems we've had a hand in installing and helped install. We've done now just over 30 systems across the state. So we can also help you if you're not in Excel territory. We work with our colleague Brett Pence up in Duluth. But Excel, because of their incentive structures and requirements by the state, tends to be the best financial option. I'll just end on this side. This was the very first system that we helped install, Shiloh Temple in Minneapolis back in 2015. Still running, still providing great electricity for that location. It just shows that we've been doing this for a long time. We know people in the industry. We've developed good partnerships, and we can help you do it safely and effectively. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Buff. Put your contact information in the chat and we'll send it out in resources too. I'm going to go over to James with Citizens Utility Board, Minnesota.
Beautiful. Thank you so much to the MNIPL folks for having me. They're really good partners in a lot of the work that we've done. So I'm happy to be able to be here. As has been shared, my name is James Birr. I'm the Outreach and Communications Manager with the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota. And the focus of my chunk of the presentation today is going to be focused on residential home energy upgrades, talking about how that impacts the federal tax credits and then or is impacted by them, and then talking about what other rebates and incentives still remain past the end of this year. So just a little background on Cub. We have two realms to our work. We've been around since 2016. The first is our advocacy work that was mentioned in the first half of this webinar. The guiding principles for our advocacy work at the legislature and at the Public Utilities Commission are utility accountability, access and affordability, and clean energy. So some of the big regulatory concerns we've been involved in, as Buff mentioned, we were actively working against the private purchase of Minnesota Power. Currently, XL is before the PUC seeking to raise rates. We're working actively against that. And then we also do a lot of work on clean energy, planning for the future. What does a future without gas look like in the state of Minnesota? And how do we make sure that's affordable for everybody? On the flip side, a lot of my work is the outreach and the consumer education side of things. So we work directly with consumers almost every single week. Every week, we get a call from somebody who is either shut off or is about to be shut off, and they need help being guided to resources. We also offer these consultation services where we sit down with customers and talk about how they can reduce their bills, how they can reduce the emissions in their home, and what are different ways to improve their home comfort. And then we also do workshops and presentations. We've done a few with MNIPL, and we also are tabling throughout the state. We've been all over the state this year. Since our founding, we've helped nearly 20,000 Minnesotans. I checked, it's actually over 24,000 so far this year. We just hit the 4,000 mark for how many folks we have helped. We've saved money for almost every consumer in the state of Minnesota, for almost every county, excuse me. And we're doing a lot more work in greater Minnesota this year, especially. I believe we've been to almost every region or corner of the state. It's kind of tough to get down to the southwest corner. So if you have any connections down there, let me know. But yeah, we've been doing a lot of great work. And I'll just make a quick plug. Our website is going to have almost all of the information that I'm talking about in this presentation today. So please go to cubminnesota.org. There's information on energy costs, your bill right now, and then information on home energy upgrades, saving for the future. And then under news and advocacy, you can read about our advocacy, different stuff that is impacting consumers in the state of Minnesota. So just setting the agenda for my section today, talk a little bit about background, and then what are some of the common home energy projects we'll be talking about, how do the federal tax credits impact that, and then talking about state, local, and utility incentives. And I'm hoping that we have time for questions at the end or any sort of discussion. And I can't see the chat, but if there are any big relevant things, please feel free to shout those out. So, just some level setting. I know we kind of did this earlier with Sarah's chunk of the presentation, but I think the big thing I want folks to take away from what I'm sharing today is that the decisions of individual households are going to be pivotal to the clean energy transition. So, organizations like ours and MNIPL and other orgs can do so much work at the regulatory and legislative level, but if folks in their own homes aren't making changes, it's going to be hard for us to reach carbon-free energy by 2040. So it's also been touched on the expansion of renewable energy generation, grid investments. As Sarah shared, that changes week to week. We're trying our hardest to monitor it. Federal, state, and utility incentives are currently available for those household upgrades to switch over to clean energy. And then just a quick shout out to this coalition of organizations, the Clean Heat Minnesota Coalition. I believe MNIPL is a member of that coalition. That's a bunch of organizations working at the Public Utilities Commission trying to decarbonize buildings so we can move away from gas-powered home heating and cooking. So that's just kind of level setting where we're at now, move into the different projects and everything. So these are going to be the projects that we're talking about today and what's available for them. Energy audits, I'm sure a lot of folks on this call know about them. That's going to be a way to assess your home energy and its levels of efficiency. Coming out of an energy audit, you're going to get recommendations on how to be more efficient, and sometimes that'll include recommendations around weatherizing your home. So putting insulation in, air sealing, things like that. And then one other thing to consider if you're going to be introducing a lot of electric appliances in the home, you may have to do some panel and wiring upgrades. On the flip side, more of the appliance side, heating and cooling is going to be the number one source of energy use on your bill. It's about 55% of our bills here in the state of Minnesota. Water heating is also going to be a really large chunk. It's around 15%. And these cooking and clothes drying, not as big of an impact on your bill, but a really good place to try and reduce your carbon emissions in your home. And also, especially with cooking, there's concerns around air pollution in the home. So these are going to be the projects that we'll be talking about today. So this is kind of how CUB frames the different types of incentives that are available for all of these projects. Federal, utility, state, and local incentives. So as we've shared at the federal level, tax credits for home efficiency upgrades, like the projects described, those expire on December 31st, 2025. At the utility level, almost all of the utilities in the state of Minnesota are going to offer rebates for a variety of projects. That's even if you're like the biggest corporations like Excel and CenterPoint or the small municipals. At the state level, the state is currently planning future projects to provide more rebates for clean energy projects in the home. And then on the local level, cities all over the state have their own initiatives to transition their residents over to clean energy. You're going to see a lot in this presentation. Some cities provide, and I will try and give you as many cities as I can. Okay, so talking about the federal tax credits. This is going to be a chart of the biggest tax credits that are going to impact residents. We already know the electric vehicle tax credit was phased out on September 30th. You can no longer access that. As we talked about earlier, tax credits for solar go away December 31st, 2025. But as Buff pointed out, it's going to be really hard to even start a project today and get that on your home. What I'm going to be focusing on are these energy efficient home improvement credits. Those also go away at the end of this year. And this is an example, wrong slide. Yeah, so this is just essentially if you've been planning on making these home energy improvements, purchasing a heat pump, updating your water heater, it's a it's a good time to do that if you can fit it in so you can take advantage of these really nice tax credits. This QR code on this page is going to take you to an article that CUB wrote about the impacts that the big beautiful bill are going to have on ratepayers, not just at the tax credit level, but around energy generation, things like that. So these are the kinds of projects that are going to be impacted by these tax credits. Home energy audits, building envelope projects, things like insulation, air sealing, any upgrades to your electrical panel, air conditioners. We're primarily going to talk about heat pumps today, but there's also tax credits for efficient furnaces and boilers. And as of right now, it's going to be max 30% back on those projects, max 3,200 per year. And I'm supposed to give out the disclaimer. I am not a tax expert. I am not steeped in tax policy. This is just us trying to give the top line view. Definitely work with a tax professional with specific questions. Max 1,200 for energy efficient property cost. So that's going to be money for those home upgrades like weatherization, audits, electric panel. I also believe that water heaters are incorporated here. And there's more money available for things like heat pumps and biomass appliances. So combined, you can max out at 3,200 on this tax credit. One thing that I really wanted to get clear on, and I do have this clarity now, and I've heard all different sorts of things. For the tax credit, you need to both have it purchased and installed by December 31st. That is for residential projects. And another note is just other incentives that we will be talking about throughout this presentation, like utility rebates, state rebates. Those are going to have to be subtracted from your item costs on your taxes. I mentioned it earlier, Cub offers an energy bill consultation service, 30 minutes to just talk about any sort of energy or utility concerns that you have. You can sign up with that QR code and we can answer a lot more specific questions. So, outside of the tax credits, what other rebates and incentives are still available? First off, I always just tell folks on your home energy journey, these audits and weatherization projects, those are going to be the first thing you want to do. Audits are going to help you assess your energy. Weatherization is going to make sure that your home is as efficient as possible. Um, so on the energy audit side, most utilities in the state are going to offer some sort of reduced rate for an audit, and then that's some local governments offer further discounts. And income qualified households can get a free audit, sometimes through their utility and always through the Weatherization Assistance Program. Here to the Metro specific, Xcel and CenterPoint customers are going to get audits through the Home Energy Squad, and there's going to be two different types of audits available. These are the full cost. There's an Energy Saver visit for $70, which is recommended for homes built after 2000. Energy Planner visit is $100 and recommended for homes built before 2000. The difference between these is going to be based on a lot of older homes are going to have lower levels of insulation and just other issues like that. So you want to plan accordingly with which one you're going to want to get for here in the metro. And then these are going to be a lot of the cities that offer reduced cost audits here in the metro, and a little bit further out. My understanding is the cost of these audits is cut in half, but definitely double check. I can send all of this information out afterwards as well and answer questions. For weatherization projects, insulation, air sealing, things like that, most gas and electric utilities in the state are going to offer rebates for weatherization projects. One thing to note with all utility rebates, but especially weatherization, there's always specifications you need to reach, working with specific contractors, doing specific projects at the same time. So definitely read the fine print on that. And you can also work with your contractor on that. Some cities are going to offer incentives, and those Minnesota programs that I mentioned earlier, there are going to be rebates available there for weatherization. On the electric panel and wiring, it's not as common for electric utilities to offer rebates for those, but Xcel definitely does up to $1,500. And again, read the fine print on those. And the state of Minnesota is going to have those rebates available for electric panel upgrades. I apologize, I've been speeding through, but these average costs at the top, these are going to be coming from the Center for Energy and Environment. They have a really good website focused on electrification, and these are some of their cost estimates. Next up, for heat pumps, average cost can be, you're not going to get a heat pump for 2000. That should be updated. I've seen a very wide range of prices, and it's going to vary on where you are in the state, what you have going on in your home, things like that. 8,000 is probably like close to a minimum, but don't hold me to that. Heat pumps, if you don't know, are a highly efficient electric heating and cooling system. Instead of actually like generating heat, it's transferring heat into your home and cools your home by transferring the heat outside. How I present this is saying I'm not a physics guy, so I can't give you all the stuff people say a refrigerator in reverse. But these are going to be much more efficient than something like regular electric resistance. If you're on propane or fuel oil, you're definitely going to save money with a heat pump. One thing to note on heat pumps, secondary systems are always going to be, or for the most part, needed in the state of Minnesota because it gets really cold here. And sometimes you need to turn on that furnace or that boiler or electric resistance to make up for the efficiency loss. And heat pumps can be integrated into both a ducted furnace system, so if you already have ductwork, or they can be ductless. So just options there, information on these kinds of projects. All utilities, almost all, are going to offer rebates for efficient heating and cooling equipment, not just heat pumps. So for that secondary system, there's going to be rebates available for furnaces, boilers up to a certain efficiency level. Some local governments are going to offer those additional rebates, and the state of Minnesota is both planning a large program funded through the IRA for energy rebates, and then there's going to be another program that's funded at the state level for heat pumps. Water heating. So Similar to that heat pump technology, these are going to be heat pump water heaters. It's going to use heat pump technology to heat water. It's going to be much more efficient than just like a regular electric water heater. And there's a lot of ins and outs on these as well. But heat pump water heaters can be pretty expensive. There's also these tankless on-demand water heaters. They're efficient due to heating only water when it's needed, but that's not always a good fit for households. Most gas electric utilities offer rebates for water heaters. This is getting kind of redundant, you'll see it, but local governments offer rebates, and then state of Minnesota working on those IRA programs. Electric cooking. Not sure if folks know about induction stovetops. So this is going to be different than your standard electric stove that glows red when it's on. This is actually going to use electromagnetic forces to heat pots and pans quickly. So all of the energy is going straight into the pot. Um, it requires magnetic cookware, but it's going to boil water and cook just like so much faster than gas or traditional electric. And a lot of people say that they prefer induction. To just a regular electric, and that's much more similar to gas than regular electric. Um, so only thing that I'm familiar with that is upcoming is that the state of Minnesota is going to have IRA programs for induction or electric cooking. Final technology I want to talk about, electric clothes drying. Using that heat pump technology in a clothes dryer. These are already quite common in Europe, but venting's not required. It's going to be more efficient than gas or electric, but it's going to take longer to dry than conventional dryers because it's really pulling the water out of your clothes. But good option if you're trying to move away from a gas dryer or trying to upgrade your regular electric. Similar to electric cooking, state of Minnesota working on those projects. And that's going to be where there will be money for heat pump specific clothes dryers. Ooh, okay, really marathon through that. So I'm happy to answer any questions as we go forward. But just a
Yeah,
quick pitch on
James,
Cub.
there's a question in the chat, I think is common to a lot of folks asking about the homes and the HERES rebate programs.
Sure. Yeah. I anticipated that that was going to be a question here. Our understanding is that the programs are still moving forward. They're hoping to get launched. Um, And that's essentially all that I can really focus on. I think it would be better to focus on the utility and the local programs for now, at least. If you visit the Homes and Here's website, it says that there is no current date, as far as I understand. I'm happy to talk more directly with specific questions about that. But yes, we are still waiting for those programs to launch. Are there other specific questions on that one?
I think the kind of angle of the question is just it's going to happen at some point. How sure is it that it will eventually happen?
I can't answer that. I
Okay.
think most of those questions would have to be directed to Commerce, who is planning the program. We're very hopeful that they get launched. We've been talking about these programs for a very long time now, and it's going to help a lot of Minnesotans, we're hoping. So, yeah, I apologize that I can't give a better, more concrete answer there.
No, and I think the distinction is those were intended to be Minnesota state programs. So they're not related to the federal tax incentives that are
That's
expiring
correct.
at the end of the year.
That's correct. I can just run through a couple of things real quick. Like I said, Cub does a lot of work directly with consumers. So if you are ever dealing with an energy emergency, please give us a call. We can also set up those consultations to talk about specific energy concerns, bills, programs, upgrades. Um, we'll follow up with all these different resources. Um, see if I can get on here. Yeah. And then one final pitch. There's an organization called Good Energy Connections that's launching in these neighborhoods in the Twin Cities. These are specific energy navigators who will hold your hand through the application process to the actual implementation of projects. I'm happy to answer more questions about this. I know we're running up on time, but this is going to be a really useful resource for residents here in the metro in these specific neighborhoods. And then just a list of other resources. Cub has a list of all the utility rebates on our website. Rewiring America has a really good incentives calculator that can help you figure out your home residential projects. Electrify Everything advisors can also walk you through that process in Hennepin County, Egan, and Rochester. Air Source Heat Pump Collaborative works directly with contractors who specialize in that technology. They have a lot of good information about heat pumps. Clean Energy Resource Teams has a lot of just good general efficiency as well as solar information. Home Energy Squad is going to be the audits for here in the metro. And then finally, just always try and work with customer service as best as you can with your utility. I think, oh, and then just stay connected with our organization, sign up for a consultation, subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on social media. Um, Thanks for the time. I know it was a lot, and I encourage you all to reach out to me directly. Go to our website. All this information is there. Set up a consultation so we can talk more in depth. But I hope you have a easygoing journey when it comes to your home energy.
Thanks so much. The final slide is when we just share that we are so appreciative for support of the work in our organizations. And so those QR codes are offering an opportunity to donate to Citizens Utility Board or Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. At this point, I think I'd like to just thank you for your time and say that Buff and I think James are able to stay on past this call until about 1:15 for those people who would like to ask specific questions. So if you'd like to stick around, please do. And for everyone else, thank you so much and have a good Thursday. It's a beautiful day.
Thanks all.